Harvey and friends. Alright, we just finished chapter 26, and they had just gotten Centipede back after he'd almost fallen off the beach and into the ocean forever. So they'd just gotten up, and it was close to night. So they were really worried about what would happen if they went below deck. So let's find out. James Henry Trotter and his companions crouched close together on the top of the beach as the night began closing in all around them. Clouds like mountains peered high above their heads on all sides, mysterious, menacing, and overwhelming. Gradually, it grew darker and darker, and then a pale three-quarter moon came up over the tops of the clouds and cast an eerie light over the whole scene. The giant peach swayed gently from side to side as it floated along, and hundreds of silky white strings going upward from its stem were beautiful in the moonlight. So was also the great flock of seagulls overhead. There was not a sound anywhere. Traveling upon the peach was not in the least like traveling in an aeroplane. The aeroplane comes clattering and roaring through the sky, and whatever might be lurking secretly up there, the great cloud mountains goes running for cover at every approach. That is why people who travel in aeroplanes never see anything. But the peach, yes, the peach. The peach was a soft, stealthy traveler, making no noise at all as it floated along. And several times during that long, silent night, right high up over the middle of the ocean in the moonlight, James and his friends saw things that no one had ever seen before. Once, as they drifted silently past a massive white cloud, they saw on top of it a group of strange, tall, wispy-looking things that were about twice the height of ordinary men. They were not easy to see at first because they were almost as white as the cloud itself, but as the peach sailed closer, it became obvious that these things were actually living creatures. Tall, wispy, wraith-like, shadowy white creatures who looked as though they were made out of a mixture of cotton wool and candy floss, like thin white hairs. "Ooh," the ladybird said, "I don't like this at all." "Shh," James whispered back. "Don't let them hear you. They must be cloud men." "Cloud men," they murmured, huddling closer together for comfort. "Oh dear, oh dear, oh dear." "I'm glad I'm blind and can't see them," the earthworm said, "or I would probably scream." "I hope they don't turn around and see us," Miss Spider stammered. "Do you think they would eat us?" the earthworm asked. "They would eat you," the centipede answered, grinning. "They would cut you up like salami and eat you in thin slices." The poor earthworm began to quiver all over with fright. But what are they doing?" asked the old green grasshopper. "I don't know," James answered softly. "Let's watch and see." The cloud men were all standing in a group, and they were doing something peculiar with their hands. First they would reach out, all of them at once, and grab handfuls of cloud. Then they would roll these handfuls of cloud in their fingers until they turned into what looked like large white marbles. And then they would toss the marbles to one side and quickly grab more bits of cloud and start all over again. It was all very silent and mysterious. The pile of marbles beside them kept growing larger and larger. Soon there was a truckload of them there at least. "They must be absolutely mad," the centipede said. "There's nothing to be afraid of up here." "Be quiet, you pest," the earthworm whispered. "We shall all be eaten if they see us." But the cloudmen were much too busy with what they were doing to have noticed the great big peach floating silently up behind them. Then the watchers on the peach saw one of the cloudmen raising his long wispy arms above his head, and they all heard him shouting, "All right, boys, that's enough. Get the shovels!" And all the other cloudmen immediately let out a strange high-pitched whoop of joy and started jumping up and down and waving their arms in the air. Then they picked up enormous shovels and rushed over to the pile of marbles and began shoveling them as fast as they could over the side of the cloud into space. "Down they go!" they chanted as they worked. So see, you can see they're coming onto the clouds. I don't know whether they're supposed to be the fingers or what, but you can see there's the moon right there. There's little clouds, but I don't see the men. Do you? I'm not sure. Down they go, hail and snow, freezes, sneezes, and noses will blow. "It's hailstones," James whispered excitedly. "They've been making hailstones, and now they're showering them to the people in the world below us." "Hailstones?" the centipede said. "That's ridiculous. This is summertime. You don't have hailstones in summertime." "They are practicing for the winter," James told him. "I don't believe it," shouted the centipede, raising his voice. "Shh!" the others all whispered. James said softly, "For heaven's sake, centipede, don't make so much noise." The centipede roared with laughter. "Those imbeciles wouldn't hear anything," he cried. "They're deaf as doorknobs. You watch." And before anyone could stop him, he had cupped his front feet to his mouth and was yelling at the cloudmen as loud as he could, "Nincompoops! Half-wits! Blunderheads! What on earth do you think you're doing over there?" The effect was immediate. The cloudmen jumped around as if they had been stung by wasps, and when they saw the great golden peach floating past them not 50 yards away in the sky, they gave a yelp of surprise and dropped their shovels to the ground. And there they stood with the moonlight streaming down all over them, absolutely motionless, like a group of tall, white, hairy statues, staring and staring at the gigantic fruit as it went sailing by. And see, there's a picture of them shoveling the hailstones off and over. The passengers on the peach, all except the centipede, of course, sat frozen with terror, looking back at the cloudmen and wondering what was going to happen next. "Now you've done it, you loathsome pest!" whispered the earthworm to the centipede. "I'm not frightened of them!" shouted the centipede, and to show everybody once again that he wasn't, he stood up to his full height and started dancing about and making insulting signs at the cloudmen with all 42 of his legs. I do not like the centipede right now. This evidently infuriated the cloudmen beyond belief. All at once, they spun around and grabbed great handfuls of hailstones and rushed to the edge of the cloud and started throwing them at the peach, shrieking with fury all the time. "Look out!" cried James. "Quick, lie down, lie flat on the deck." It was lucky they did. A large hailstone can hurt you as much as a rock or a lump of lead if it is thrown hard enough. And my goodness, how those cloudmen could throw. The hailstones came whizzing through the air like bullets from a machine gun, and James could hear them smashing against the side of the peach and burying themselves in the peach flesh with horrible squelching noises. Plop, plop, plop. And then bing, 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 as they bounced off the poor ladybird's shell because she couldn't lie as flat as the others. And then crack, crack, as one of them hit the centipede right on the nose, and crack again as another one hit him somewhere else. "Ow, ow, ow!" he cried. "Stop!" But the cloudmen had no intention of stopping. James could see them rushing about in the cloud like a huge lot of hairy ghosts, picking up hailstones from the pile, dashing to the edge of the cloud and hurling the hailstones at the peach, dashing back again to get more, and then, when the pile of stones was all gone, they simply grabbed handfuls of cloud and made as many more as they wanted, and much bigger ones now, some of them as large as cannonballs. "Quickly!" cried James. "Down the tunnel or we'll all be wiped out!" There was a rush for the tunnel entrance, and half a minute later everybody was safely downstairs inside the stone of the peach, trembling with fright and listening to the noise of the hailstones as they came crashing against the side of the peach. "I'm a wreck," wounded Centipede. "I am wounded all over." "Serves you right," said the earthworm. "Would somebody kindly look and see if my shell is cracked?" the ladybird said. "Give us some light," shouted the old green grasshopper. "I can't," wailed the old glowworm. "They've broken my bulb." "Then put in another one," the centipede said. "Be quiet a moment," said James. "Listen, I do believe they're not hitting us anymore." They all stopped talking and listened. Yes, the noise had ceased. The hailstones were no longer smashing against the peach. "We've left them behind." The seagulls must have pulled us away out of danger. "Hooray! Let's go up and see." Cautiously, with James going first, they all climbed back up the tunnel. James poked his head out and looked around. "It's all clear," he called. "I can't see them anywhere." Chapter 28. One by one, the travelers came out again onto the top of the peach and gazed carefully around. The moon was still shining as brightly as ever, and there were still plenty of huge, shimmering cloud mountains on all sides. But there were no cloudmen in sight now. "The peach is leaking," shouted the old green grasshopper, peering over the side. "It's full of holes, and the juice is dripping out everywhere." "That does it," cried the earthworm. "If the peach is leaking, then we shall surely sink." "Don't be silly," the centipede told him. "We're not in the water now." "Oh, look," shouted the ladybird. "Oh, look, 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 look over there." Everybody swung around to look. In the distance and directly ahead of them, they now saw a most extraordinary sight. It was kind of an arch, a colossal, curvy-shaped thing that reached high up into the sky and came down at both ends. The ends were resting upon a huge flat cloud that was as big as a desert. "Now what in the world is that?" asked James. "It's a bridge. It's an enormous hoop cut in half. It's a giant horseshoe standing upside down." "Stop me if I'm wrong," murmured the centipede, going white in the face. "But might those not be cloudmen climbing all over it?" There was a dreadful silence, and the peach floated closer and closer. They are cloudmen. There are hundreds of them, thousands, millions. I don't want to hear about it, shrieked the poor blind earthworm. I'd rather be on the end of a fish hook and used as bait than come up against those terrible creatures again. I'd rather be fried alive and eaten, wailed the old green grasshopper. Please be quiet, whispered James. It's our only hope. They crouched very still on top of the peach, staring at the cloudmen. The whole surface of the cloud was literally swarming with them, and there were hundreds more above, climbing on that monstrous, crazy arch. But what is that thing? Whispered the ladybird, and what are they doing to it? I don't care what they're doing to it, the centipede said, scuttling over to the tunnel entrance. I'm not staying up here. Goodbye. But the rest of them were too frightened or too hypnotized by the whole affair to make a move. Do you know what? James whispered. What? They said, what? That enormous arch. They seem to be painting it. They've got pots of paint and big brushes. Look! And he was quite right. The travelers were close enough now to see that this was exactly what the cloudmen were doing. They all had huge brushes in their hands, and they were splashing the paint over the great curvy arch in a frenzy of speed, so fast that, in fact, in a few minutes, the whole of the arch had become covered with the most glorious colors, reds, blues, greens, yellows, and purples. It's a rainbow, everyone said at once. They are making a rainbow. Oh, isn't it beautiful? Just look at those colors. Centipede, they shouted, you must come up and see this. They were so enthralled by the beauty and the brilliance of the rainbow that they forgot to keep their voices low any longer. The centipede poked his head cautiously out of the tunnel entrance. Well, he said, I've always wondered how those things were made, but why are the ropes? What are they doing with those ropes? Good heavens, they are pushing it off the clouds, cried James. There it goes, they're lowering it to the earth with ropes. And I'll tell you something else, the centipede said sharply. If I'm not greatly mistaken, we ourselves are going to bump right into it. Oh, bless my soul, he's right, the old green grasshopper exclaimed. The rainbow was now dangling in the air below the cloud. The peach was also just below the level of the cloud, and it was heading directly towards the rainbow, traveling rather fast. We are lost, Miss Spider cried, wringing her feet again. The end has come. I can't stand it, wailed the earthworm. Tell me what's happening. We're going to miss it, shouted the ladybird. No, we're not. Yes, we are. Yes. No. Oh, my heavens. Hold on, everybody, James called out, and suddenly... Uh-oh. Do you think the cloudmen are going to like this? I don't think they're going to like this very much. And suddenly there was a tremendous thud as the peach went crashing onto the top of the rainbow. This was followed by an awful splintering noise as the enormous rainbow snapped right across the middle and became two separate pieces. The next thing that happened was extremely unfortunate. The ropes that the cloudmen had been using for lowering the rainbow got tangled up with the silk strings that went up from the peach to the seagulls. The peach was trapped. Panic and pandemonium broke out among the travelers, and James Henry Trotter, glancing up quickly, saw the faces of 1,000 furious cloudmen peering down at him over the edge of the cloud. The faces had almost no shape at all because of the long white hairs that covered them. There were no noses, no mouths, no ears, no chins, only the eyes were visible in each face, two small black eyes glinting malevolently through the hairs. Then came the most frightening thing of all. One cloudman, a huge hairy creature who must have been 14 feet tall at least, suddenly stood up and made a tremendous leap off the side of the cloud, trying to get one of the silk strings above the peach. James and his friends saw him go flying through the air above them, his arms outstretched in front of him, reaching for the nearest string, and they saw him grab it and cling to it with his hands and legs. And then, very slowly, hand over hand, he began to come down the string. They're coming after them. Mercy! Help! Save us! Cried the ladybird. He's coming down to eat us, wailed the old green grasshopper. Jump overboard! Then eat the earthworm first, shouted the centipede. It's no good eating me. I'm full of bones like a kipper. Centipede, yelled James. Quickly, bite through the sting. The one he's coming down. The centipede rushed over to the stem of the peach and took the silk string in his teeth and bit through it with one snap of his jaws. Immediately, far above them, a single seagull was seen to come away from the rest of the flock and go flying off with a long string trailing from its neck. And clinging desperately to the end of the string, shouting and cursing with a fury, was a huge hairy cloudman. Up and up he went, swinging across the moonlit sky, and James Henry Trotter, watching him with delight, said, My goodness, he must weigh almost nothing at all for the seagull to be able to pull him up like that. He must be all hair and air. The rest of the cloudmen were so flabbergasted at seeing one of their company carried away in this manner that they all let go of the ropes that they were holding, and then, of course, down with the rainbow, both halves of it together tumbling towards the earth below. This freed the bees, which at once began sailing away from that terrible cloud. But the travelers were not in the clear again. The infuriated cloudmen jumped up and ran after them along the cloud, pelting them mercilessly with all sorts of hard and horrible objects. Empty paint pans, paint brushes, step ladders, tools, saucepans, frying pans, rotten eggs, gross rats, bottles of hair oil, anything that those brutes could lay their hands on came raining down upon the beach. One cloudman, taking very careful aim, tipped a gallon of thick purple paint over the edge of the cloud, right on the centipede himself. The centipede screamed with anger. "My legs!" he cried. "They're all sticking together. I can't walk, and my eyelids won't open. I can't see, and my boats are ruined." But for the moment, everyone was far too busy dodging the things that the cloudmen were throwing to pay any attention to the centipede. "The paint is drying," he moaned. "It's going hard. I can't move my legs. I can't move anything." "You can still move your mouth," the earthworm said, "and it is a great pity." "James," bawled the centipede, "please help me with this paint. Wash off this paint, scrape it off, anything." They're throwing everything down at them. And that is where we're going to stop for the night. All right, my friends, I want you to think about a couple of things. How would you have done when you had met these cloud men? Do you think that it's real, that there's cloud men in the sky and that's how we get hailstones and rainbows? Or do you think it's from something else even more magical? While we're listening to this story, I want you guys to maybe think of one or two scenes from the story that really have meant something to you or you really liked. And I want you guys to see if you can draw them for us. And when we do, we'll put it together as a book. Okay? All right, my friends. Have a good night. Bye.